Yes, we're with Eric Dolan, who's Deputy Director of the Jersey Financial Services Commission. That's not the capacity why he's here. We're talking to him today because he's another person with a Christian faith, and we're looking at the role of faith in the finance world. You've just given a brief talk on certain aspects. Are they compatible, faith, Christian faith, and the finance industry?
Is faith and Christian faith and finance industry compatible? I mean, it's an interesting question. You separate faith from Christian faith. I suppose I'll just put the question back to you. How would you discern between the two?
Well, I'm looking at it in the context of the Bible. That's people who believe in Christ. Mm-hmm. And obviously there's a moral code which goes with belief in that and the Bible. So there's a set of regulations. There's no enforcement of those regulations, but standards which are supposed to believe.
Yes.
So can they be applied in the business world, particularly in Jersey as the finance world?
Can they be applied? Yes, they can. I think there is conflicts that can result in having a moral code based on biblical principles, and perhaps the workplace environment and the type of jobs. I think there is bound to be an overlap, but there's bound to be an edge where there is conflict.
Ironically, the biggest fraud in the world that's ever known is Madoff and Co. in America. But of course, those were people, they were of a religious belief, they had a religious standard, a religious ethic, but it didn't stop those people committing huge billions of frauds.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't speak for them, but do you not see echoes of that in the more accepted amongst Christian financiers?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest fraud by far. Reasonably small fraud actually compared to WorldCom and Enron and other such instances which were corporate frauds across many jurisdictions. I was not aware Madoff had any faith. I'm not sure if you're referring to a Christian faith.
Well, he claimed. Probably. I mean, he would claim to be a rabbi, and one of the faults which I was going to say to you was that he was able to exploit that connection amongst fellow Jewish people to take money off Jewish people. He moved very much in that community.
And shame upon him if that is the case. I would say that any linkage that you have. I mean, we had a reference actually to a salesman and a Christian. How can a salesman be a Christian? And he said it's about building relationships and trust. But anyone can exploit anything. So an atheist could exploit other atheists who are part of a forum, perhaps. Does that mean that atheism necessarily is an incorrect thing, or there's a conflict occurring in there? I think Christians, true Christians, know that the Lord taught them to be humble, and that pride is probably the worst sin, and the desire for money above all else. The love of money is the root of all evil, often stated. But I think anyone can exploit a characteristic that they have or something which they are alleged to, and it sounds like, unfortunately, Madoff did in this instance.
The international nature of finance means that you're going to be dealing with people of different faiths, no faiths all over the world. Is it realistic to expect people to apply their Christian ethics internationally? Is that a realistic expectation?
I think we all are individuals. I think we are all made up of thoughts and beliefs from learning, from nature, from nurture. I think Christianity should be a driving force for a Christian, but no man's an island. So with respect to should Christianity or Christian principles apply in an international business arena, I think business is about trust. I mean, we've seen that with the banking crises, without doubt. You erode trust and the financial system fails completely. Now, is Christianity and the message of Christ opposed to that necessarily? I don't think so. I think a Christian has to base his life and his working life on integrity and trust. Unfortunately, we all fail. We all fail. Atheists, agnostics, Jews, Muslims, Christians, whatever. But you have to look to the ideal. And look to the ideal, you look to Christ. And I think that answers hopefully your question with respect to...
The international finance world, it is international and deals with a lot of poor countries, developing countries. Are we really going into such countries, China, India, for example. Great wealth there, but extraordinary poverty.
Yes.
And we're trying specifically in Jersey to develop markets there. Are we going there for our benefit or for the benefit of the people there?
I'm going to cop out here. I mean, Jersey Finance obviously goes in there. I mean, I'm a regulator, so I sit across industry. I don't promote industry. I ensure that they maintain an ethic, actually, their codes of practice with the laws. I think there is potential conflicts that we should consider when we go into places like China. I think politicians, the UK government, the US government, etc., have to consider those conflicts as well when they're dealing with places like China, communist system and unbelievably grinding poverty, and human rights abuses. You know, can you deal with this? Should you exclude them completely? It's a very interesting question.
Talking about regulation, of course, yes. For the large part, people dealing with financial activities here don't know how it affects somebody in a faraway place. The pound notes, the euros or whatever comes across the desk here doesn't show you what's actually happening on the ground in a developing country. Are we regulating that from any ethical point of view? I mean, even the Christian one, or what regulation can be applied in those sort of instances?
I mean, if I can take your question broader, what Christian aspects can you apply to regulation? You know, we assess individuals in the finance industry against key criteria, fit and proper criteria, integrity. Well, that's a great word, integrity, financial standing, competence. Now, on integrity, you can see definitely an overlap there, but you have to be so careful as anyone with a faith that you're there doing a job. If it aligns, great. It's when there is a conflict, that's when you're put into harder positions. But I don't think in a regulatory position there is much of a conflict, actually. I think if you promote Jersey PLC, I think you can come across that conflict to a much greater extent. And the same for politicians. And then again, I allude back to UK politicians, etc., China. How much do people see dealing with euro, pound, noughts and zeros, which it is all financial, see the underlying potential impact on that? I think there is an awareness. I think Jersey provides a service like London does, New York, Japan, Singapore, all other locations. Could there be inherently something wrong, dare I even say evil, with respect to some of the transactions? I would say only a fool would say that there is nothing that flows through Jersey. Money generally is tainted to a lesser or great extent. But I think if you focus on know your customer, know who you're dealing with, you will find that often the alignment between corruption and exploitation leads straight into our laws that people should not accept those sort of customers. I think Jersey's gone out of its way in the last 10 years, out of its way to be at the forefront of ensuring corruption and money laundering is eroded as much as possible from our. We've purged our system a lot. I mean, this is a personal opinion. I would say comparing ourselves to London, I think is a sometimes very favourable contrast to make. Does that make it right to say that you're whiter than somewhere else? Not necessarily, but we live in an imperfect world.
Of course, other countries are equally blameworthy in rather strange ways. Mrs. Marcos, we thought we'd got rid of Mrs. Marcos, and she had money floating around all over the world. Now she's back in government again in the Philippines. So you think you've got rid of somebody, they come back. So
I can't comment.
And a slightly strange aspect, Sharia law is being adopted quite, it's being accommodated. Laws are being amended to. Does that cause you any problems as a Christian?
I'm not aware of laws necessarily being changed or just. You're talking about UK laws now, I presume.
Well, I believe Channel Island specific funds being established which are compatible with Sharia law.
Kaput funds, etc., I'm aware of, generally nothing to do with the Commission. If you actually look at the principles behind those, they're actually, I think, quite good principles. No derivatives, no transactions which are just are almost baseless. The transactions have to be based on a true asset, no usury or interest. So I don't see a problem as a Christian, personally, with those sort of products at all. In fact. I think they take away a lot of perhaps the issues and risks that were bubbling up in 2007 in the banking area and funds area.
You were asked a question in your talk today about whether you'd like to have prayers at the start of day's business. It's an interesting question because it sort of focuses attention on the proceedings, the daily proceedings that people, the ethics that they're going to apply to their day's work. I mean, it may not be a realistic aspiration, but the thought's quite interesting, isn't it?
I think it is. I think there has to be a separation. I mean, if you go back through history, you see a separation of church and state. I think, and we all know the US example, I know that our state's assembly starts off with the Lord's Prayer every time. I think I don't have a problem with that, of course. I welcome it, even if it's, I probably won't understand it because it's probably not in English. But I think there should be a separation, actually. I think faith should be very personal. We are instructed to witness our faith, to reach out, to look onto the fields for the white are ready for harvest. But when it comes to the work environment, I think there should be care applied. And that's how I'd like to answer that question.
I think we'll end it there. Thank you much indeed.
Thank you.